Welcome to APCUG's Saturday Safari, where we embark on a journey through the thick jungle of technology jargon, seeking the lost treasured answers to our tech mysteries. Today, it's February, and as a service, I guess, and it's partly technology related, every February for our Wednesday or Saturday Safari, we invite Tom Burt, the vice president of the City Summerlin Computer Club, to join us and share with us a review of this year's tax software to help you get through this jargon of thick technology and legalese. Tom wrote his first computer program in Fortran back in 1946 at Wayne State University, which began a career that spanned 61 years. Tom has worked as a software engineer and IT manager in the automotive, construction, aerospace, banking, and software tool industries. Tom got his first Apple II computer back in 1982, and by 1984, he was writing software for IBM PCs. Since retiring, if we call that, those of us know that we are busier than before, from Silicon Valley to Sun City Summerlin in Las Vegas 22 years ago, Tom has been active as a part-time software developer, webmaster working for the community's IT department. Tom is also very active as the vice president of the computer club. His activities include giving seminars on technical topics, editing the monthly newsletter, maintaining the club's website, and developing custom software for managing the club's activities. You need to retire, Tom. So I'm going to be turning things over to Tom because he's going to share a lot of information about taxes in 2025. Go ahead, Tom.
All right. Thanks, John. It's nice to be here. Let me share my screen so you can see my slide deck. We'll get going. Everybody see that okay?
Yep.
Hopefully. I'll stretch it a bit. And let me proceed fairly briskly. This is usually about a 2-hour presentation. I'm going to squeeze it a bit just because we've got more stuff happening later this morning. So the agenda for the day, I'm going to do a quick introduction. I'm going to review briefly the versions of TurboTax, then do the same thing with H&R Block. And I'm going to mention there's another option now, Free Tax USA. But we're mainly going to focus on H&R Block. That's the software I use. And we're going to do a nice demo. I've made up a fictitious senior couple that we'll do the tax return for. I'm going to actually walk through, not going to do every individual step, but we'll see enough so you can get a sense of how the program works. If you're new to this, then you'll have an idea whether that's the way you want to go. We'll talk a little bit to the Big Beautiful Bill Act. I've got a summary slide on some of the new provisions that were enacted this past July. And that may be interesting. We'll see how that works. So just in case the temptation's always there, we're talking about tax software programs. And innately with that, we're going to talk about the tax laws and how things work. But I'm not really a tax advisor. I don't have any certifications or licenses. So I would say don't rely on me for tax advice. Particularly, don't rely on me to interpret the tax laws. Very, very highly paid professionals that try to do that still get it wrong. And so I'm far from being an expert, even after I've been doing my own taxes probably going on 50 years now. So I've been there many times. So I said, we're going to look at TurboTax and H&R Block. There are other programs, but these are the two main ones that you can buy as a consumer. And we'll be demoing H&R Block. All right. Few things to know. If you've never done this before, filing your taxes with one of these programs, some benefits. It's very easy to work with them because they do a step-by-step interview. There is a direct forms mode if you like to find box A on line B and so on and put your data in directly, you can. And interestingly, it cross-references back so you can go between the interview and the forms as you need to. Nice thing about these programs is if you've done your tax return in the previous year with one of these, you can import the data. That saves you a lot of work. Many of the things that in more complex returns, you have carry forwards of deductions you couldn't use, things like that. And these programs remember all of that stuff. So you can get going each year very quickly by starting from last year's tax return. Key thing to know too is TurboTax can import from H&R Block and H&R Block can import from TurboTax. So if you want to switch vendors, you can do that without too much pain. The programs can go get a lot of the financial data from your broker, from your banks and things like that. They can also import from Quicken. A really key thing about these programs is when you change any number, or let's say as you're working through, you keep adding more and more information. It's like a spreadsheet. It instantly recalculates everything. And it really is valuable. You might, this has happened to me any number of times. So I'll have gotten my 1099 from my broker and I put all the numbers in. And then about a month later, here in the mail comes a corrected 1099. The numbers have changed. Not a lot, maybe only $5 here and there. But when you put those numbers in, they change your adjusted gross income, and everything in the return tends to be sensitive to that number. Many things have phase outs that are based on your adjusted gross income or your modified adjusted gross income. Other great thing about these, the programs know and follow the latest tax rules. There's a lot of error checking, audit review. One thing, these things don't normally, I won't say never, but almost never would make a math error. And they just are very exhaustive. When you get to the end, you run through an error check. They do an audit review. And then, of course, once you're done, these programs will facilitate the electronic filing. That's where the program makes an encrypted connection directly between your PC and the IRS. You get a nice receipt back from that proves you filed. You can put that in the bank if you want. All of these software tools also can do state income tax. And I live in Nevada. There is no state income tax. So I don't have to worry about that. But for many of you, after you're done with the federal, you can run the state income tax and import all the data from the federal return and then make whatever adjustments are needed. And the final thing, if you're particularly working with the desktop versions of these, but the online as well, everything online is encrypted. if it's stored on this software company servers. But it's completely private, where when you get a tax preparer involved, innately you're sharing personal financial information with them. So it becomes an issue of trust, whether you do or don't. All right, let's move into the software versions. TurboTax is still made by Intuit, and that's their website. They have a free version for very simple returns. That's part of the IRS free file program. There's a basic, which is pretty simple, and then they incrementally add more functionality as you go up the line. But interestingly, if you run, say, an eBay storefront or some kind of a consulting business, gigs, maybe you're an Uber driver, any of those things, you have to file a Schedule C. Well, for that, you have to get TurboTax Home and Business. And that's the most expensive version. So something to be aware of. And you might start with something like Deluxe and then discover, well, I had stock sales I didn't think about. The program will offer you the upgrade to Premier, let's say, but the upgrade is at the full retail price. So be mindful of that if you're, try to know which version you need at the outset, because generally you can find software on sale, TurboTax and H&R Block. Go to Costco, Amazon, someplace like that. You can save a little money off the list price. Most of this is also available now on the web. You can start your tax return for free, and when you're ready to file, you can pay. One thing to be cautious of, I just learned this about a week ago. TurboTax desktop versions are not supported on Windows 10, only run on Windows 11. So if you're one of the people that stayed on Windows 10 through the ESU program, extended security updates, your desktop TurboTax won't run on your version of Windows. So you either have to go upgrade to Windows 11 or go with one of the online versions. So just have that in mind too. Something else to know. As far as the features of TurboTax, they have an interview. You do personal information, your income, your deductions or expenses, and then you go credits and like estimated tax payments. They have a forms mode. You can pop open a tax summary window anytime to see where you are. A lot of built-in help. They have something called a deduction finder, starting with Deluxe and above. And of course, you can print out the final return, either for mailing in or just for your own records. You're going to want to have at least one print copy of the official return in case you need to use it to go apply for credit. Maybe, let's say you want to buy a car. Sometimes they want to see, if you're retired in particular, they want to see your tax return. It does support the electronic filing, and they do have state returns. So that's TurboTax, and I went kind of fast there because that's not the one I'm going to demo. Here's H&R Block, and they have, again, a free version, a basic version. The deluxe version, here's where they differ a bit. The H&R Block Deluxe does also the stocks, rental properties, Schedule C businesses. And I just got an email ad again from them yesterday. You can still get H&R Block Deluxe for about $45. So not a bad deal compared to some. If you're running maybe a what is a subchapter S corporation or an LLC, something a little more complicated in the way of business, you might want to get their premium version. And then for corporate returns, there's a premium in business version that's probably more than most average people need. And again, you can get them online or as downloads. They have been touting also an AI assistant this year. I haven't tried it, but if you need more thoughtful help, the way I understand this is it can look at your return as you're working on it and intelligently answer questions. Maybe you've got some more complicated situations. You know, some of the real estate stuff you get into is really very elaborate. And the other nice thing, H&R Block's versions run on both Windows 10 and Windows 11. So you don't have to worry about compatibility in that sense. As far as the feature set, it's very similar. They have a step-by-step interview. You do personal information, income, the expense side, credits, payments, and stuff like that. They do have a forms mode. They have a nice tax summary report window you can pop up. A lot of help. And again, you can print the return out. They do e-filing and they do state tax returns. So functionally, the two programs are essentially identical. If you have a preference for one over the other, that's fine. All right. So, and I'll mention, let's go to this website because I didn't put any slides together. Free to Tax USA. And their pitch is federal filing has virtually every form, is free. Where they make their money is if you need to file a state return, it's about 15 bucks for one of those. They do have a more deluxe version with support from experts. But let's take a look at the website just real quick. And so free federal, all right. Federal 0. So if I slide my thing down here, you can read about it a bit, but as I said, the rental income, investments, sale of your home, all the home ownership things, self-employed, small business contractors. So just about anything you would do on the federal return, you can do for free here. This is strictly web-based. As far as I know, the reviews on them are pretty good. So it might be something to look at. All right. Let me close that up and we'll come back here to my slides. So what we're going to do today, let's get into the meat of this, which is we're going to do John and Mary Smith's tax return. And I'm not going to read all these numbers to you again. I made up John and Mary many years ago. I have to adjust their birth dates each year to keep them about those ages. Reason for that is then they have to take required minimum distributions from their IRAs. But they have some wage income, some Social Security, interest, treasuries. They get some dividends and some stock sales. They each have an IRA, so they take required minimum distributions. They have Roth accounts as well, and they do conversions from the IRA to the Roth. Once money's in a Roth, as I'm sure most of you know, any additional earnings of those funds accrue tax-free. So it's a good place to own high yield income vehicles because you're not getting taxed on them. They do have a rental income property, which we'll look at a little bit in a second. As far as expenses that they can deduct, Mary does run an eBay storefront, and she makes a little bit of income there. And so there's this qualified business income deduction. Charitable contributions are not deductible directly in 2025. In 2026, the new law has $1,000 again that you can deduct and still take the standard deduction. But qualified charitable donations have been around for quite a while, so they do some of that. They've got health insurance premiums, healthcare expenses, property tax on the home, long-term care insurance, that's a deductible medical expense. And they each own a car, so they pay license fees. Pretty typical senior couple. The income property looks like this. I put this in last year. That's what they paid. They made some improvements. So the depreciation basis is $290. And on, they get rent, they pay mortgage, and they pay some real estate taxes on that. But again, because this is an income property, most of that's deductible from gross rent. They have some depreciation. We'll look at the Schedule E where all of this gets put in. All right, so the way this works, I'm going to go through the steps pretty quick, but let me summarize them first. We're going to import the prior year's return, do the personal interview, then put the income items in. I'm not really, I'll show some of the rather than type everything in front of you. But the idea is, even if you're going to wind up taking the standard deduction, and these days it's quite high, so it's not easy to accumulate enough itemized deductions to make it worth actually doing that. But it's good to put the data in because then it's in the following year's tax return. And it may be, again, you have carryovers that accumulate enough that maybe one year you can itemize and the next you take the standard. We'll put in the estimated tax payments. And then when you get basically to the point where you're wrapping up, you want to go through a cycle of just revisit everything, make sure you didn't miss anything, make sure all the numbers you put in are right. Let the software do the final review, do the auto checks, and then you print your return out. And since they're fictitious, I can't really do the e-file for you, but we'll see. All right, so let me pull up, there it is. So there's H&R Block. Now I did my best to zoom my fonts, but H&R Block seems to be using their own fonts. If this is a little small, I apologize. Now I've got a completely finished return for John and Mary, but let me start. I'm going to say start a return. All right, and do you want to import from last year? I'm going to say next. And there's the 2024 return that I did last year for John and Mary for this same class. I'm going to say import. Good news, we've successfully imported it, and we click next. We want to give it a name, and I don't want to overwrite the good one that I spent a half a day putting together. So I'm going to name this one Demo and say save and continue. We're not going to import from financial software because I don't have any for them. So it starts asking you questions. If you were in the military, you can check that box, but we weren't, or they weren't. Filing status is married filing jointly. If you're single or one of these others, click the right bubble, and then this basically sets all the various limits that are kept. So then we get to what's effectively the personal information. So it's John J. Smith. John has a job working here in Sun City as a fitness monitor. We have 4 fitness centers, and they staff them with residents, and they pay a bit more than minimum wage. There's his date of birth and so on. And then the wife, Mary, as I said, she has an eBay storefront. We'll learn a bit about that business as we go. There's where they live, and that's a fake address, a fake phone number. And they were full-year residents of the state of Nevada. You would put your state or states in there. It can get interesting if you are a snowbird and maybe live in like Phoenix, Arizona part year, and then you live somewhere in the northeast, maybe Dayton, Ohio, something like that. Paying attention to your residencies. So we can skip the state and income tax screens because we're living locally. And was your main home in the U.S. for over half of 25? That would be the case for them. All right, and then you start in with all this little stuff for John and Mary. Like if you were blind, you get an extra personal deduction kind of thing. If you're incarcerated, interesting. All right, but I'm pretty quick. I'm going to jump over to the other return now. We're not going to share our experience here. This wasn't there earlier. Let me see if I can just get by that. No, thanks. We don't have any dependents. All right, so the minute I get to the income screens here, we're going to, whoops, let's go back. We don't have any child tax credit things, so let's say finished. All right, so we're coming up to income. Let me show you. I come up here when you've been working for a while, and I recommend do this often. Say save as. Yeah, we're going to replace the one that's there. Okay. And now I'm going to just close out of this and relaunch the program. All right, and this time I'm not going to mess with the demo one. I'm going to go to the fully finished one. All right, and let me come back now to the federal. Here you get a quick summary of where we landed. We finished all the personal information. What's nice about this is you can selectively go to individual topics. So you don't necessarily have to start at the front and walk through the entire interview. If you're doing it for the first time, it's a good idea, though, to do that. But let's go to John's wages and see he works for the community association. That's what it looks like. We can hit edit and see there's all the details about the employer. Give you a second for your eyes to track that. And then here's the number, and this would be straight off the W-2 form you got in the mail or maybe at work. So the wages, and John does not participate in the 401k program. It doesn't necessarily make much sense to do that if you're in your 70s, because you're just putting money in and taking it right back out again. But the amount of the wages, the amount of federal tax, Social Security tax, Medicare tax, that's there. If there were other deductions, that typically would be for like the 401k, you would list those there. And there's a drop down here for all the possible types. You might get, like, again, non-taxable sick pay. They itemize that out separately. All right. But once you filled all that in, and again, if you live in a state with an income tax or a city with an income tax or a county, you're going to have boxes for that stuff too. Were some of your wages overtime? And this is one of the provisions of the new tax law. So I said yes. John worked a bit of overtime. And this will be itemized out, I believe, on the W-2. They give you an example, though. This was the no tax on overtime provision of that tax law. But you only get to exclude the amount that was in excess of your regular hourly wage. So let's say you work 10 hours of overtime and you got time and a half, you would get 10 times the half as the qualifying overtime that you could exclude. So in John's case, that was $180. All right. Was it a non-standard W-2? No. All right. So we're done with that. You get typically for your bank interest a 1099 form that says how much interest you earned. And they did own a U.S. Treasury bond that paid some interest as well. Let me show you that form, but again, I don't want to get too bogged down. And so you might get several of these. If your broker paid you interest, you'd get one, any bank accounts or CDs, possibly a few others. So if there was any federal income tax withheld, they'll list that and you put that in there. There might be some other deductions or adjustments. And then you get to the bottom. All right, I won't bother with the other one. We'll just keep going. Dividends and distributions. Let's take a look at how that turned out. Your broker is going to send you a composite 1099 for all the things that transpired on your accounts. So this is their joint regular account, not their IRAs. They got dividends in that amount. Part of the dividends were qualified. Some were not. A non-qualified dividend is essentially interest. Let's say you own an exchange-traded fund that trades bonds. They pay you dividends, but the money that's being paid to you really was bond interest. So that's not qualified. Qualified dividends are subject to maximum amounts that they can be taxed. They're considered preference income. Cap gains are the same way. So if part of what you got was a capital gain, that is listed out separately. All right, so you fill in all the boxes for this, whatever's needed. Click next. They'll tell you the details about all this if you need to know. You can always come over and help center, so you know they'll tell you what the rules are about something if you're not sure. All right, so that was their dividends and distributions. Let's see. Here's Mary's business. and also their real estate, their rental property. Let's take a quick look here. So Mary runs a homemade doll shop. These are cloth dolls that she sews, and then she sells them on eBay. And it's not a big business as these things go, but it's something to do. And we can take a look. Again, you fill in this. Now, since it's her own business, there are things that might imply she didn't employ anybody. It's just a home business. None of this other stuff. She didn't pay anybody else, like consultants or lawyers or anything. She uses the cash accounting method. She was the sole proprietor, so yes. Also, business income. She didn't get anything that was reported on a 1099 NEC. That's fine. Didn't get any miscellaneous income. Didn't get any 1099K income. Proceeds, gross receipts were $3,550. Nothing applied there, patronage stuff. She didn't have a bank account, really. At least not, it wasn't worth carrying a separate one. She had returns. The dolls sell for about $50 each, so two came back for whatever reason. And she had inventory. She used the cost method. Didn't change, and on and on. So she started with 200. She spent $1,750 on supplies to make the dolls. Wound up at the end with 3 dolls in stock, so $150. And that's what the thing looks like. So cost of goods sold, $1,800. Returns and allowances was $2. And gross income was $1,650. And then we look at her expenses, and we wasn't worth doing the home office thing. Once you start, if you say, and maybe again, it's a different, you might consult out of the house. If you're claiming a home office deduction, you have to depreciate pro rata that percentage of your home that's used as the office. It has to be exclusive, all these requirements that are very difficult to meet. And then when you go to sell your house, you've got all this elaborate bookkeeping to deal with. So it isn't worth it unless you have a fairly substantial business. Same thing with the vehicle. And as far as property, there's nothing really there. Maybe a sewing machine, but she uses that outside of the business. So she did pay commissions and fees to eBay and a few other small business expenses. So the commissions and fees were that amount. And she had shipping costs because, again, it's that kind of a business. Every time somebody buys a doll, you've got to box it up and ship it. So that was the other major expense. And so those totaled up to $525. And when you get to the final bottom line, we're almost there. Her net profit on the business was $1,125. Okay. So how am I doing on time here? Pretty good. Let's look at the rental. Let's see. Yeah. So once again, this is a home that they own. It's also in Sun City, and they rent it out. They did not buy or sell it this year. They didn't use it personally. They owned it for the full year. And no miscellaneous income, no K income. Gross monthly rents were that. Depreciation deduction, that's based on a standard formula, 8,182. I won't go into that, but just again, you fill in the form and it figures it out. Didn't use a vehicle. So basically, when you own a rental home, you still got expenses. There's insurance. They pay somebody to manage it for them. So that person gets the calls at 11 p.m. saying that the toilet's overflowing. They pay real estate tax and ongoing maintenance and repairs, 1,700. So those are the expenses. And mortgage interest, yeah, that's what they pay on that. You'd get a statement from the bank. Because this is a homeowner association, they have to pay association fees. And specifically here in Sun City, we have some duplexes, and those are also maintained. They have a sub-association, and so there are dues for that too, but they do all the exterior maintenance and gardening and things, which is one of the appeals. If you pay money to have that done, but it's another thing you don't have to pay for separately on your own. All right, so that's kind of how the whole picture looks for them. And we'll work on your rental loss. Let's see. Okay. Was your average lease 7 days or less? No, it's not a B&B. They're not a real estate professional. Mary they were both active in managing it. Did they sell it? No. And we get to the final bottom line. So the income property's throwing about 4,500 in income for them anyway. All right. And they were entirely at risk. So let's see. I guess we can do this too. This is the other part of with a brokerage account, you may buy or sell stocks. All right, let's look at what that looked like. All right, and so they had two transactions, sold 500 of Pfizer, and there was a net loss on that of 1,000. And then they sold 200 of Unum is an insurance company that does benefits for companies, life insurance, various things like that. Let's look at that one. They sold at a profit on that one. We don't have to do both of them. It was a simple sale, so we don't need to do a group sale. So you put in a description, and it's just the stock symbol is good and the number of shares. It was acquired at different times, but they're all long-term. So you can put in VAR-L rather than a specific date. They sold them all at that time. Gross proceeds were 16,414. Their cost on this was 3,444. No special type of sale. It was long-term. You put that bubble. No federal income tax was withheld, so the gain is going to be a taxable long-term gain. But as we'll see, they really wind up paying no tax. All right. And the Pfizer was sold at $1,000 loss, but it looks exactly the same. You put the data in. They got interest Let's see. Well, that was the complete. I guess we're finished there. Okay. They had a capital loss carryover from the prior year, 9,000. That's why it's nice to import. And okay, we're into their Social Security and their retirement. And I'm still doing pretty good. But when you take required minimum distributions or do Roth conversions, those deductions from the IRA are fully taxable at that time as ordinary income. I'm not going to go through those because I want to get back to some of the other things. And they ask you a bunch of questions here. So they're fully taxable. We know that. And it's going to be the same for the spouse. All right. Social Security income, there again, you get a 1099. You can fill in the numbers. This will include your Medicare premiums, which are deducted from your Social Security up front. And there's no federal tax withheld. There were the Medicare premiums that we're talking about. So let's come up here and move over to deductions because I wanted you to see. Again, you put most of these in. New additional deductions. Let's come over and take a look at this one because now John, although he works, he doesn't get tips as a fitness monitor. So the no tax on tips did not come into play. Some of you may work jobs where you get tips. I don't know if you work at a restaurant or maybe as a driver. Again, if you're an Uber driver, something like that. But the one I wanted to point out is the enhanced deduction for seniors. So let's click next. And now it's 6,000 per person. This is taken before you take either the standard or itemized deductions. It has a phase out, but that didn't come into play here because their income is relatively low. For a married couple, it's 150,000. For single filers, it's 75. Once you're above that, it phases out at 6 cents per thousand. But right off the top, this deduction is applicable. So 12,000 of income is deducted. And here's a summary of other things. But so their total deductions are 12,180. There was that 180 of overtime. All right. So that's the deductions. Now, see, I didn't go through these, but they're state and local taxes. And the new tax law, I've got a slide that summarizes all that. They put back the cap on state and local taxes being deductible. They raised it back to 40,000 from 10, but it wouldn't have been capped in their case anyway. But it turns out their standard deduction is way bigger than what they could itemize. Don't know that there are any credits. I don't think there were. But John did pay estimated taxes, so I wanted to get to that. Let's take a look here. So you can, here. This is a new thing. It's been a couple of years now. I don't know why they feel they have to do that here, but you have to certify that everyone in your household Well, you don't, I mean, if you didn't, you say so, but I don't know exactly what the purpose of this is. But anyway, everyone in their household had health insurance, Medicare, pretty much would be. If you worked for the government, you might have been in TRICARE or one of the other things like that. What kind of health care? And because they're in a Medicare Advantage plan, it isn't straight Medicare. That's the box to check. Uh, that's all we need to know. Okay. Excess accumulations. You got to watch that you meet your required minimum distributions. If you don't, you can be in trouble there. But generally, that's the case. Mary's going to pay a little bit of self-employment tax on that income. And they figure that out. And here's sort of the last gasp. All these possible things that this is why the tax law runs to 100,000 pages. Just incredible stuff. All right. So estimated tax payments for 2025. And John was paying $100 a quarter in estimated taxes just to make sure they didn't get into a underpayment situation, then you get penalized. But this was before the big beautiful bill passed. And once that passed, with that $12,000 of personal deduction, no point in making the fourth quarter payment. So they paid 300 in estimated taxes. I don't know if, depending on your situation, you might or might not have figured that in. All right, well, that's pretty much, we get down to, here's your taxes penalties. So that's the picture. And how to avoid an underpayment, da 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 da. Any of these special situations. John's going to take the refund. And that gets us, they want to know your driver's license now too. So you have to fill that in. Let me see if I can get by that quick. And again, I made up the driver's licenses too. Any other things? So we're just about there. Accuracy review. And they say, come on, address this. So we can just, there's 3 data verifications in one issue. That's pretty good. Update required for filing. So it's not my problem. It's that H&R Block's software is even as late as February 21st. By the way, I started it up earlier today. I got an update. The software keeps updating typically till mid-late March. So you may want to wait on filing depending on your situation. But what it's saying here is don't file until you've gotten rid of this issue. So we'll just proceed on. And then the data verifications, these might have been check boxes I didn't check. So we'll say next. Non-deductible contributions. They didn't make any, so 0's right. And I think that's the same for Mary. Okay, let's continue. Now, let's see, we sort of get stuck here. That's the problem with doing this class earlier, but it doesn't do you any good after April 14th or 15th. All right, we're pretty happy with this, so at this point. So here's the final tax summary, and you can go get that at any time by going up to reports. And there's some various. So this is income 52, deductions 46,000. Taxable income was only 5,200. They had made that much in payments. The actual tax due because of the the big change from the tax laws turned out only to be $159. So they're getting a refund of $985. And there we are. The last thing we could do is come up here and say File, Print. I'm going to pick the Microsoft Print to PDF. You can print the official return, and then you can also print it with worksheets. Let's do this. And let's see. That's the same name. So this is the filing copy, and then you can print a records copy. I'll say save, replace it, and it's going to pop up. It should. No, I guess not. Maybe it's hiding back here. I just wanted you to see. It's going to be back here. Okay, there's the filing copy of the PDF. And just so you see what that looks like. And if you've ever, this is the 1040 SR is the form it chose to print. And all your numbers and everything are in there. And I usually just keep the PDF handy. And if anybody wants to see my return, I open this file up and just print out a clean copy. You can print one out and put it in your paper file folder if you want. But it's good to go through this before you e-file. Just look at all the lines, make sure everything makes sense. All right, I'm going to close that tab and I'm back here. So as I said, I can't e-file because they're not a real couple. Let me mention, if your AGI, your adjusted gross income, is under 84,000, you can go to this gov.free file. They'll direct you to one of the software company's free products. If you're over 84,000, there are fillable online forms at irs.gov that you can fill in. Depending on where you live, the AARP does this free tax assistance. Our community, they're doing that this year. You have to sign up ahead of time. Depending on where you live, that may be available. EFTPS.gov, I was going to mention, you can now go there and enroll online. The IRS is going to mail you a PIN, which takes a few days to get to. You can link your checking account to the EFTPS account. Basically, then you can go there and pay your estimated taxes, any taxes due related to this year's return. You get a receipt back that is considered guaranteed proof you paid. That's important because if you mail your return and your check in and the check gets lost, the IRS still considers that your fault. And so you may get notified that you haven't paid and you may get penalized. If you pay through EFTPS, one, it's almost instantaneous. They have a record of all your past payments. That can be helpful if you're not sure about how much you paid in estimated taxes. The new thing with EFTPS, set up a couple years ago, they went to two-factor authentication, which makes it much harder for somebody else to impersonate you and file for a refund. The service they're using is id.me. You have to register separately there. That's their URL. So when you go to log into EFTPS, you get routed over to ID Me. You fill in the stuff there. It phones you or sends you a text. That text you key into their site. They validate you. Then you get switched back to the EFTPS site. You log in there with an ID and password. So it's a little bit more work, but it's quite a bit more difficult for a hacker to get in. Social Security Administration and IRS.gov are also using 2FA via this ID Me service. So be aware of that. If you haven't been doing this or haven't logged in for quite a while, it takes a bit of work to register at ID.me because oddly they want to take a photo of your driver's license as part of that. Anyway, you get an emailed receipt when you make a payment, and you can, when you're logged in, you can print out a receipt on screen. But that emailed receipt is as good as gold. It says you did pay. And one thing to be aware of, if you don't use it for a long time, I ran into this once. I hadn't used it for over 6 months. The account goes dormant, and then you have to reactivate it. So here are the tax law changes. We'll probably treat this as our wrap-up point. I've got a few links there, so when they're going to send my handout out or make it available to the attendees. A couple of summaries of the one big beautiful bill. And there's the complete readable text if you want. Only 870 pages. And it's all paragraph this, paragraph that, cross references. The summaries are a lot easier, but here's a quick rundown. Everything that was passed in 2017 was made permanent. Particularly stuff like the estate tax. There are pretty large exemptions now for those. 100% bonus depreciation for business. That's a good thing. Got rid of some of the energy tax credits. The estate tax exemptions there. It's currently running about 15 million for a single, 30 million for a couple. So that's a pretty large exclusion before you pay estate tax. They set up these accounts for minors now, $1,000 if they're born 2025 to 2028. Other members of the family can contribute up to $5,000 to those accounts. So, and that's pre-tax, meaning whoever makes that contribution gets to deduct that $5,000 or exclude it from their income. Charitable deductions came back, $1,000 per individual. So if you're a couple, you can deduct up to $2,000 of charitable donations above the line. Again, that's before the standard deduction. And they did keep the qualified charitable donations, which is where you have your broker cut the checks to your charity and you pay for those out of your IRA. Those donations satisfy your R&D, but again, they're deducted above the line. So if you have a number of charities you like to contribute to, you can do that, and they then become deductible. But for small donations, this other $1,000, $2,000 thing is available. Again, the no tax on tips up to 25,000 starts phasing out for single filers at 150,000 of income, modified adjusted gross income, 300,000 if you're a couple. These sunset in 2028. So there's going to have to be another round of legislating those. Taxes on overtime up to 12,500. Same phase outs as the tax on tips. The salt tax deduction went back to 40,000, as I mentioned. That sunsets in 2030, and again has phase outs. I don't think when I was looking this up, I didn't know what the numbers. And last, seniors, as we saw, 6,000 per person. This is another deduction above the itemized or standard deduction. Starts phasing out at 75 for singles, 150 for couples. The 150 is fairly high. You're not going to, most people on Social Security aren't going to hit that. But if you're single and you've got a moderate amount of income, my 6,000 shrank to about 4,100 by the time everything else was factored in, because it's based on modified adjusted gross income. That includes, like, if you own tax exempt munis, the interest is not taxable, but you count that interest in modified adjusted gross income. Lots of things like that come into play where you might get surprised at how large the MAGI is relative to taxable income. Okay, I think I've just about done it. I've got some reference links you can look up later. I've got this year's tax rates just for reference, and this is the 2026 tax rates for you. What the standard deductions are, everything like that you need to know is there. So if you're, got to remember, when you're working on your taxes, the first quarter estimated taxes are due April 15th as well. And so generally you got to have some idea what the new brackets are and what these deductions are. Okay, we will say that's a wrap on the formal presentation. And why don't I, hang on, here's this, I'm going to unshare. I'm back. You can see my face a little bit. So turn it over to Judy.
Hey there, Tom. Thank you so much for as usual, great presentation.
Thank you.
And I have from Gary, he says, I use H&R Block. When I download my fidelity data into the program, it brings in all the income, dividends, etc., including my RMD, but it does not bring in my wife's RMD. If I sign in as my wife's fidelity account to download her RMD files, data rather, the program downloads all the data, duplicating everything. And I guess I would put a comma and say, what am I doing wrong? Or he has caution.
I would say it seems like it's combining their joint assets and then whoever's logged in, their individual assets. This happens because each IRA is a personal account, so it's not linked to the other person. But if they have a joint account, which most of us would have, quite often your trust owns that if you have a living trust. It looks like it's munging all that together into one. Probably the best thing is hand enter the data. Let's say he got all of his IRA data downloaded with the joint data. Just go back and manually enter the data from her account. They should be getting separate 1099s from the broker. So the data is available. I mean, that's what I generally don't use the automatic downloads. I just take the time to take the 1099s that I get, read them, and hand enter the data. That way I don't have to worry about strange things like that. Okay, I hope that was a good answer.
Made sense to me. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
And Janice says, how does TurboTax compare to H&R Block using her iPad and laptop with Safari?
Well, TurboTax I don't use anymore, and I'd have to spend about 130 or so to get the whatever home and business version. So I can't really tell you from experience, particularly since the last time I used TurboTax was 9 years ago. And then I just used it because I wanted to have a side-by-side comparison. And my sense is because when I did this tax class for our group about 3 weeks ago, I was about equally split. And I think most people from the TurboTax crowd said, yeah, I get it. I understand. It looks about the same. So that's the best answer I can give you. They're not very different. One thing you might wonder, though, when I did this experiment quite a while back, side by side, same data exactly, I got different numbers in the final tax return.
Right.
And you would think that should not happen because the calculations should be identical. But that was 9 years ago. So
I kind of remember learning that at last year's presentation. Somebody must have asked a similar question.
yeah.
And Larry says, Mary, being age 72, doesn't need to take an RMD for tax year 2025?
They changed the rules. It's the new age is 73.
Oh.
So she's lucky for one more year, I believe. Though again, don't trust me. Go ask Gemini or some one of those. What's the age for RMDs? And I think it'll tell you it's 73. So if you had not yet turned 73, you're okay. But some of us, the age used to be 70, and then it went to 72, and then it went to 73. And I turned 70 when it was still 70. So RMDs are something I've been doing for a long time.
Oh, to be 70. Marty, over to you. Please unmute yourself.
Yeah.
You're still not unmuted.
Hey, Marty, you
There.
there
I found a second mute. Can you hear me now? Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
I too want to shift from TurboTax to one of the others. And excuse me if I've missed this, but can I import last year's tax file with all its data into, let's say, H&R Block?
Yes.
Okay.
This interesting. I mentioned Free Tax USA. I double checked on that a while ago. They also will import either TurboTax's tax file or H&R Block's tax file. So you
Great.
don't have to key everything into Free Tax USA either. So essentially, they're all interchangeable.
Okay, that's encouraging. Thank you.
You're welcome. Good.
David McCall.
All right, David, you need to turn your mic on.
Okay. John has to take the time to find you on his list and unmute you. Or give you permission to unmute. So I bet you have it. There you go.
There we are. There we are. A couple things. You said during the presentation that the TurboTax Deluxe didn't allow you to do the Schedule Cs. I've been using TurboTax for a number of years. My wife has a small business, and it does the Schedule Cs just fine in Deluxe.
Good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, again, my experience from a few years ago, but I got to the Schedule C and the Deluxe version said, sorry, we don't do that. And it wanted me to buy whatever the next step up was.
Yeah.
Maybe they changed that back because But then I can't see, there's not much point then in buying home and business or whatever their top line product is. But if it's doing it for you, great.
Yeah,
Take it.
it's been doing it for me. The one other thing I wanted to ask about, sometimes you want to do tax planning. One of the things that I'm in the midst of doing is some Roth conversions from my IRA and like that. And I want to figure out, well, how much can I convert before I start to hit some of these boundaries? And I know in the TurboTax, they have what's called a what if form, where you can bring in your data, make a copy to another column, change some of the numbers, and it will, and you can use next year's tax rates as well.
I know H&R Block has a similar estimated tax planner. I haven't been using it because I basically built my own spreadsheet with macros that has all the tax tables and everything in it. And I just found that the programs tend to assume that your income is spread evenly over the year, unless you take there is a way to quarter by quarter estimate your taxes. But my spreadsheet's set up that way from the get-go. So, and I could do a whole class just on that sometime, but not many people would probably understand it all. But yeah, if it does that, great. It's very important to do your estimated tax planning as well. Because a decision like that, I had been converting a certain amount from my IRA to my Roth. And because of a different thing that has to do with Medicare premiums, if your MAGI gets above a certain level, they really whack you on Medicare premiums.
Yeah, those are the IRMA cliffs.
IRMAs, yes, exactly.
Yeah, and and it's not you're not paying a higher rate if you go over. You go $1 over, and your
that's right.
Rates can jump.
You go $1 over, and you get whacked with the whole amount of the increased premium.
Yeah,
and they do that in about 3 steps. There's an ultimate cap, but it was about triple. The premium on Medicare could get to triple what it is if your income was not triple, maybe double. So that's something to be mindful of, definitely.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway, I was just wondering, if you had seen or used the estimating, software, just because it's good to give you an idea of, well, how much do you want to do? But then you have to do a lot of details to figure out if you want to get it down to that last dollar. and then you have to.
And if you've got a lot of dividend income, and I still do software development consulting, you can't predict that well when the income's going to come in and how much it's going to be. So some of that you just have to play it by ear. I do quarterly estimated, so at least I don't get way out of whack. But if you have a big chunk of income come in late in the year, they're going to wind up hitting you with underpayment penalties anyway, unless you spend time.
There is actually a form that you can file with the IRS that tells them when a chunk of income came in, and that as long as you pay for that chunk in that quarter, you should be okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie, you're on. Unmute yourself, Stephanie.
Thank you. I have purchased TurboTax for a long time, and I've done it again this year. But it sounds like, since they're only asking you to pay for it at the time you send it to them, then I don't know anything, and I could switch over to this. I think you've persuaded me.
Well, I'm not necessarily advocating one over the other. It's just my experience has been I've been happy with H&R Block.
Well,
And
I have a little tiny amount of channel uh, for business, and that would right now I'm in Premiere, so and I know how to do that business thing. I've been doing it for decades. I don't need their help for that, but if that means I have to pay another $20 or $30, that doesn't sound like a good idea. And I've already, up at the Premiere level.
no. Well, I didn't make the observation during my talk. If you hire a tax professional,
Hmm.
they're going to charge you typically these days it's about $100 a form.
Hmm.
So my tax return has about 20 to 30 pages of forms in it. So do that math. Compared to, I mean, even TurboTax at 130, whatever it would be, is quite a bit less expensive.
Yeah.
And, you know, go ahead.
The other thing is, I gather that H&R does not itself charge you something, or what happens at the end in terms of sending it? Is there a charge for that? I said it said
Well,
$16 or something like that for the federal and something for the state.
well, I paid up front about $45 for the software, which gets me a federal free e-file.
Okay.
They have a package where it's federal plus one state,
Mhm.
which is a little bit more expensive. And actually, I think I get 5 federal e-files. So if I were a good grandpa, I'd be willing to do all my kids' tax returns, something like that. I could do 5 for the price of one, but I
Well, I
don't
don't.
work that
Yeah.
hard. It's hard enough to do my own. I don't want to do anybody else's.
Okay.
But
I
anyway,
Very
agree.
good.
when it's time to file, you've already basically paid for the e-file in purchasing the software. If you did the free thing, when you try to print or try to e-file, it'll want you to pay.
Mhm.
It's true in both TurboTax and H&R Block if you
Okay.
decide to do it online.
Okay.
All
But
right.
as long as I have one of each and I get the thing that covers that'll take care of it.
Yeah, should.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
You're
JP,
welcome.
please unmute yourself. Click in the lower left-hand corner of your screen on the microphone. Alan, you're on. Unmute, please. Oh, you were unmuted for a moment.
Okay, can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Okay. I must be the only one confused about the 3 different options. You got the free one. Why wouldn't everybody use the free one? What does the paid ones give you that the free one doesn't give you?
Okay, I think are you talking about Free Tax USA? The one that I mentioned?
Yeah, the Free Tax USA. Why
Well,
wouldn't everybody use the Free Tax to USA?
I would say mainly it's sort of inertia. If you like, let's say, TurboTax and you've been using it for 20 years, you may want to invest the time in learning a new software program. It's web-based, but it's still another thing to learn. In my case,
Okay, but
go ahead. I'm sorry.
And many people don't like to use web-based tax programs, period.
what is the disadvantage of web-based tax programs? Why don't people want to use them?
They don't trust it because it's all online.
Right.
Well, what do you guys think? Do you guys think they're safe enough to use?
Well,
Well, Tom uses what he uses. He's an expert at it. He gives this presentation to his retirement community, and I imagine the majority of them use it. But it's just your personal preference, Alan. Whatever you like to use, you go ahead and use it. And the
Okay,
price
fine.
to
I
use the
won't.
programs are not that expensive.
yeah, I
And
guess,
then as far as comparing the price of H&R Block versus TurboTax for the same program, is H&R Block cheaper than TurboTax for the same situations?
I would say yes. You get, for, as I said, $45 got me everything. Schedule C, Schedule E, all of the, stock brokerage type stuff.
Okay, so for $45 you got everything you wanted, whereas with TurboTax you would have had to pay 130 something.
That seems to be about the price for TurboTax, yeah. Now the
Got
one
it. Okay, I took enough time.
well,
Thank you.
Okay, let's try JP again. She has unmuted herself.
Yeah. What is your opinion of TaxSlayer versus the H&R Block using an iPad or a laptop and Safari? TaxSlayer.
Tax Player, Player,
TaxSlayer.
Slayer, Slayer. You've asked me a question. I have zero knowledge of. I don't own an iPad. I don't have Safari, and I've never used TaxSlayer. So my opinion is, well, it's probably as good as the others, but I'm not the person to ask. Maybe somebody in the audience might have something to say. I don't know.
Is TaxPlayer free?
TaxSlayer is a software package that you download.
Okay, many people say free is what you get, what you pay for. You're getting not as good as paid programs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Except for John Kennedy, who use all open source programs that are usually free. Wash my mouth out with soap if I don't say that. But it's been my experience with hearing people's crabs and complaints. Again, you should use a well-known program.
Yeah, I second Judy. For doing something like taxes, I want something. Actually, I don't mind paying the money because that keeps that company alive and funds the development they have to do. And see, every year the IRS and the Congress change the tax laws. So you need somebody that will reliably update that software every year to be compliant. And something that's free suffers from that issue that you got some guy in his garage writing this software and giving it away because he's altruistic. But there's a point where tax software is hard work. And you can't really make a living giving stuff away for free. So I'm always leery of free stuff where there's no obvious way they can afford to fund the development. Just my bias, I guess.
John Kennedy, you are our last comment question, and then we're going on to genealogy.
Right.
Yeah. The comment about the online, there are times when you are forced to do that because certain companies won't make their software available to all operating systems. And
That's
so
true.
you go with a name brand, but you have to go with their online because they won't take the time to write it for a certain operating system.
That's true.
And you know, you just have to trust it. And as Tom said earlier, that these major companies, even though they're online, they're major companies and it's their business. So you know, I go to my state's website and do online tax because it's easy, and you know, that's their business. So it's going to be a secure site. But it's not like, you know, Tom said, you don't want to go with somebody who just says, hey, I got a free program. You want to go with somebody reputable, and online, it's going to be secure.
And you can always check with your local senior center or your library and see if AARP people are there. Book your appointment early. They fill up fast because it is free. They are all professionals. In my case, in Santa Clarita Valley, they all have their own businesses and they take time out from their own business to volunteer at the senior center to do seniors taxes for free. They don't do the really complicated ones, but if they do, never mind, they're not supposed to refer to anybody else. But I put the link and the information in the chat box to everyone if you're interested in pursuing that. Mr. Kennedy, do your disappearing act. Thank you.
Okay. Take care, everyone.
Too cool, Tom. Thanks.
Thank you.